Hey, hey, all you lovely people out there. You've got a lot going on in your day with big dreams and big goals for your world. Are you ready to talk some shizzle and learn some shizzle from leading entrepreneurs, changemakers, coaches, and overall interesting people who like to shake things up? I'm your host, Taylor Shanklin, CEO and founder of Creative Shizzle, and I am stoked to bring you a fresh episode of Talking Shizzle today. This show is all about helping you think differently so that you can grow. Talking Shizzle is brought to you by our team at Creative Shizzle, where we help businesses, entrepreneurs, and social good innovators make amazing marketing shizzle happen. Check us out on the web at creativeshizzle.com. Now, let's talk some shizzle. Welcome back to a new episode of Talking Shizzle. Today, I'm really excited to have our guest, Sylvie Légère, on the line. Sylvie, how are you today? Good morning.
Great. Good morning. It's great to be here, Taylor.
It's good to have you here. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about. We're going to get into, some founder stories that you have, talking about the process of publishing a book. We'll talk a little bit about the work that you do at the Policy Circle. But let's kick it off with give us a little intro. Who is Sylvie Légère? What's your backstory? What are you passionate about? Give us a little bit of a rundown on who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And I'm thrilled to be here. So I'm actually, I think the term that we came up with, I'm kind of a social entrepreneur. I've spent most of my career in technology as a program manager back in the day. And I dabbled into owning a small business in my community and having a bike shops. And then the last really 6 years, I've been really focused on social entrepreneur and especially on civic engagement and how do we get people to engage in their communities to make things better, take ownership of solutions, and engage in a constructive manner. There's so much divisiveness in our country and polarization, and we forget the things that are important and that most people actually can find common ground and find solution that really foster innovation, adaptation of solution to local issues, and really freedom and free enterprise. So that's been really my focus.
First off, I didn't know that you owned a bike shop at one point, like a bicycle shop.
Yeah, for about 8 years, I was a co-owner, my husband, and his college buddy. The bike shop in our area was going bankrupt. Sadly, the previous owner passed away really suddenly. And they did not want to see the bike shop disappear from our area, so they kind of took it on. And I was a runner. I'm a avid runner. I was a recovering runner. I decided to start biking, and it's actually what got me into organizing things for women. Because back, already 10 years ago, I'd say women were not that much into cycling, like road cycling, investing in a great bike, and women biking was just starting. So I was really part of that wave of organizing clinics, leading some rides, even myself doing some bike trips. And I really got into biking because we own the shop and it's such a fantastic community. It also got me into triathlons, and it's a great way to connect and also become more aware of what's happening in your town and bring people together. So it was really a fantastic ride, and we closed it. Our lease was up, and we were all involved in other ventures as well. So owning a retail shop requires a lot of owner's attention, and we decided to let our lease go and move on. But it was really a great experience.
Well, that's really cool. I agree. The cycling community and triathlon community is a really strong kind of a network. So that was maybe one of your first kind of forays into really being an organizer or a grassroots organizer. And something I love about you, Sylvie, like you're very multifaceted. You do a lot of different interesting things. How do you start to kind of find your focus? So now, like, you're pretty focused on some very specific social ventures that you do. How did you finally say, what's this one thing that I'm now ready to go all in on and really focus on?
Yeah, that's always the great question because we're pulled in so many directions, right? We're asked to get involved in so many things. And what I realize is, and I think like we have to look at things in terms of, you kind of categorize, right? There's some things that fuel you, that's social, that's fun, and you bring joy to other people's lives, right? So you might have that as your focus and you decide this is kind of my calling, is to really bring joy to others and be a convener. The way you also find your one thing that maybe is more harder a little bit or more work is to try to see how everything connects. So I give you the example of actually the bike shop. The one thing I did not realize when I was owning the bike shop is actually I was not aware at all of civic engagement. I was part of some citizen advocacy group to have more bike shops, to have the city do a bike plan. In that context, though, it never occurred to me or really late in the game, it actually occurred to me, and I did meet the city council, but I'd never fully understand the connection between building bike roads and an active community where active transportation is easy, and fully understanding and getting to know our representative in office and also the agencies, the engineering department, the community department, to really be on board with what's their goal, what's their challenges, and how can we just advocate together to make things happen. I was kind of just on the other side with this advocacy group and showing up at town hall meetings without fully understanding how decision making functioned in a city. And so I feel like, in finding your one thing, you need to be able to connect the dots back to the one thing that matters. And that's what I started engaging in, and I co-founded the policy circle because I felt like understanding public policy, local government actually is the way to really get to the root of our problems and also advance some real solutions. So I'll give you another example. I was really passionate. I initiated a project to engage people with intellectual disabilities and working out more and exercising more. And it was a great software that we did and we tested with a lot of people. And I realized in meeting so many people in the community of people with intellectual disabilities that, hey, people needed jobs. They wanted jobs. And the only organization that will give these people jobs they could be big organizations, but also really small ones, really community-based one. And we need to lighten the load of corporations and small businesses in terms of regulations, red tape, etc., so that they can expand what they do to include people of all different abilities in their workforce. And that requires extra effort. It requires extra resources that you need to dedicate to employ someone with an intellectual disabilities. You need to train your employees. You need to kind of assign a mentor. You need to revise how the job is designed. And if you are small business owners, there's a lot of things that you have to do in addition. And if red tape and government regulations is another burden and having to file things and be compliant, there's another burden, then you can't do that. And that's why I feel like, that's why I founded the Policy Circle and decided that my focus is going to be on engaging with local government and engaging in policy issues so that we could keep our society and our country free for people to innovate and bring solution forward and include everyone in that process. So, to summarize, I think to find your one thing, you need to experience a lot of different things. So as you said, I say yes to a lot of things that are just really unexpected, right? I was an avid runner, a marathoner. It was a really hard for me to become a cyclist. And I fully embraced that community. I had to learn everything about biking and it just gave me that exposure, right? Same with this project with people with intellectual disabilities. I jumped into it with my trainer, my real trainer. And I said, let's create something that will be engaging for people with intellectual disabilities to train more effectively. And that exposed me to a whole other world and community that I'm so grateful I've met. So and it's the same. And so if you do different things, and that's what a little bit the policy circle is about, giving you the tools to have a conversation about different issues, such as mental health, economic growth, literacy, opioid crisis, all these different topics that give you some knowledge to then engage with people who are acting in that field. And then maybe you discover this is pulling my heartstrings, and also I could bring forward my talent into this issue. So I think you need to say yes and not be afraid to do things that maybe don't seem as much fun initially. But with the idea that you'll gain a breadth of experience that will allow you to discover your passion and also allow you to connect all of your dots.
Yeah, it's funny. I cycled first, and cycling then got me into running. So it was like the opposite. I think I had to get in good enough shape on the bike to be able to run. No.
Oh, that's so funny. I could have handled all the gear, like you put you on your running shoes and you go. And then by biking, you have to check your tires. You need the helmet. You need the gloves. You need the clipping shoes. You need your water and then your phone. And you need your tools. You need a lot of stuff just to get going. Right. And then you need a good bike. You need great gear.
I think that's a good segue into the next thing I wanted to get in with you on. And that is, like you said, you need a lot of gear. Okay, well, let's talk about the policy circle. So you founded it. You talk about how it started a bit in the book, though I hadn't heard this side of the story, which I thought was really interesting. But then how did it start to evolve? Getting the right gear, getting the right team in place. Let's get a little bit of that story from you.
Yeah, that first off, it started off with my neighbors. I invited them to a conference that was focused on women. It was run by the American Enterprise Institute, and it was a conference about public policy and women. And we came home and we said, this was really great, but we don't want to go downtown. Let's bring people together in our neighborhood and then just see what people have to say. And I said, sure, let's just do that. And you can't really do things alone, is what I've discovered, is that you really need to do things where you have other people that think that it's a good idea. It's not just your one idea. There's other people. You can't be a leader without a first follower and a second follower, right? And then you're three, and then you're kind of a crowd. So you need to have other people that think this is a good idea. And then we brought people together, and the energy that was there. And essentially, I went around the room and I sent out an invitation and said, I'd love to invite you to talk about the direction of the country. And I called it political fiber. I was going to serve green juice. I did serve green juice and vodka, which is kind of weird mix. And then we just went around the room, and this is where I discovered this power of giving the space for everyone to express their thoughts and their idea. Instead of opening the floor to any comments, I intentionally went around the room and invited each of my guests to share why they were there and what was their background in politics and policymaking involvement. And the overwhelming message there was that people have learned to not say anything, to hide under a rock, to just not engage because they were afraid of personal altercation and conflict. So there was really a need for a space to exchange on ideas, to practice, to strengthen our voice and comfort, and not be afraid of engaging in a constructive way and facilitating discussions in a constructive way. So we said, okay, let's meet again. And then more people came. There was like 25 people who came. So then we divided up into smaller group. When we had said, okay, let's read a book. And I said, nobody reads the whole book. So let's read the first 4 chapters of the book so we could commit that to reading it. And it was Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. And then we discussed that, and the energy was amazing, right? Taking a pause, taking the time to review information and document that you would not do in your daily life and for fun, but then discussing it with others. That's where you learned so much about the people that were there. You learned about their different life experience, their different perspective. And that's why you realize we could really find common ground and understand how the world works so much better. So the third meeting, we had a discussion around healthcare because it was during the whole Obamacare era, Affordable Care Act. And then I was like, I cannot possibly pull together this information. There's so much out there. I don't know what's what. I'm not an expert. And that's where I decided, I'm like, okay, I need to have briefs, or I need to have something reliable. And I was sharing along the way, I was sharing this experience with other women that I met at a public policy conference, and they were experiencing something similar in Indiana. And they were the one who said, well, let's get together and express a little bit of a vision of what could this look like as a organization or just an idea. And then let's see if another organization would pick it up and we could just be champions of it. And no one, it was very grassroots, right? It was a gift to women, a framework to engage in difficult conversations about complicated topics like poverty, taxes, our social security system, the Constitution, topics like that. And we couldn't find anyone to really pick it up. And then we decided to start it. So I had co-founders to start this organization. I think that's the key thing. If you decide, and I decided I'm an executive person, like I like to take an idea and turn it into reality and put together the steps to do that. But you can't do it alone. You need to have people that will accompany you in that bring very different experiences.
Absolutely. So what were some of those other types of skill sets that you found that you needed early on in building the policy circle to really make it come to life? Because now it's really a growing and thriving organization, and y'all do fantastic work helping women become very well educated in public policy and then even move into public official roles if they want to. You help guide them. So what were some of those other early people you surrounded yourself or skill sets with?
Yeah, and I think that's applicable because I'm also on the several boards of different tech startups. And I think it is key to have as a partner in a new venture that has done this before, perhaps, or just a mentor, someone you could talk to who has taken something big or has worked into a large organization. Because those people, they kind of, for instance, with the policy circle, when we first started, we had like some processes in place, and Angela Brawley, my co-founder, kept saying, well, how is this going to work when we have 10,000 members? How is this going to work when we have 10,000 circles, right? Like to always think bigger. So you need to surround yourself, and it might not be your partner, your co-founder, but a sounding board, a someone you could talk to who is being part of a building something big, because you need to be able to have that as a vision. You also need at some point down the road, and you just need to plan for it. And I was really lucky with the policy circle as I was building it and getting some traction. Someone came to me and said, I've built a nonprofit, and I think I can help you professionalize your organization, because especially if you are especially in the nonprofit world, very quickly you are under a lot of scrutiny where you have to have audited books. You need to have governance documents. You need to have, employee handbook much earlier than you would in an LLC in a private company. So at some point you will need to professionalize your processes. So you need to be ready for that, or you need to really think about, okay, I'm going to need someone, a real accountant. I'm going to need someone who will put in place all of these documents and someone who has that experience. And there's a lot of services that do that. And then on my board, so this was a little bit like a year in, I think I got someone to really become the executive director. Also on my board and my co-founders, Kathy Hubbard, and an incredible network. So you need every successful enterprise. You need people and you need a network. And I talk about this, and you need to constantly nourishing your ecosystem of relationships and building out those relationships. And you need someone who has a really extensive network who can bring credibility to your venture because they know her or him and can really move you forward. So that's another piece. And then honestly, you need to have someone, and this is early on also, I think a year in, I brought someone who had a pretty broad toolbox in terms of technology. So building out our technology, but also building out all of our collaterals, all the creative, like all the template for the PowerPoint presentation, the little PDFs that you want to send, the badges that you want to share, a lot of those creatives. early on, you need to have someone on your team to do that, to help you with that. I think that, initially, and then you need to have like thought partners, obviously you need to be able to kind of grow, and maybe someone who could back you financially. You need to think about that. And you need to have a thought partner, someone who could help you like grow the strategy. And you can also bounce off a lot of hurdles that you may be crossing. That's why there's, YPO groups. There's a lot of groups of peers of these startup, these caucuses or these incubators or small groups where you could really share hurdles. And that's really helpful.
Absolutely, having a thought partner. And I just admire your humility and saying like, I can't do all of this alone. That's not a good idea. And like, you need these other people who bring different skill sets and who bring different thoughts and different ideas and different perspectives. So kind of the next place I want to take this in to round us out is talk about your book. So you help people, and really going back earlier in the conversation, when you first invited people over for the first conversation to talk about the bigger issues, what you really do is you help people learn how to trust their own voice. And you wrote a book called Trust Your Voice, and you have a podcast called Trust Your Voice. Tell us about the process of writing that book. That's big and hard and scary, and you had to do a lot of things to lead into that next phase to be able to say, all right, I've got enough meat here to write a book.
The need for writing a book was to have a place to tell the story of the policy circle. Like I have to say, the policy circle transformed me as a person, as a leader, just everything. It really changed me. And I wanted to share that journey. And it's not about the what, how the policy circle functions, that you bring women together to engage in a policy discussion. We have about like 60 briefs. You pick a brief from the library and everybody comes prepared, and we have a facilitation guide. That's kind of the what, right? But the effect that these conversations have, the effect of leading a conversation, taking that risk, inviting people to participate, that changes you and enhances your ability to lead. So I wanted to tell the story of the why the policy circle is so important to me, and I think to other women that it changed their lives and their journey. And I wanted to tell their stories. So I wanted to write a book to say that. I had someone help me write the book because it's a little complicated because it's not a linear story, right? I didn't want to just tell a chronological story. I wanted to share a journey of transformation and also what I believe are kind of the pillars to really have the confidence to trust your voice and to deepen the relationships with the people that you meet. And so we identified all of these different pillars as a first part of the process, right? And kind of in creating an outline. It's like, well, what are the important messages that you want to share? And then we went through each of the chapters in balancing sharing some studies, sharing some facts, some knowledge, some of my personal experience. And that was really hard because it's really hard to actually talk about yourself and tell your story. And that's where it's helpful to have someone to bounce things off, because what you think is completely insignificant, not that interesting, other people find interesting. Like you just said, you do all kinds of things. I'm like, yeah, and I don't think it's that interesting. So you need to have someone who, you need to bounce off ideas. And I think that's a key part of the process. So we went through, identify all of the key pillars and then build the stories around each of them. I wanted to also give a part two. It's like, well, how do you engage and facilitate policy discussions in your community? So I incorporated some tools that I developed to do that in the book. So I wanted it to be a guide that people could refer back to in their journey and their life growth.
It's a great book. I've got it. It's right there on my shelf. I've been inspired by your book. I've been inspired by the work that you do. I've got one final question for you. What is a tip that you would give to your younger self if you could go back and speak to the younger Sylvie?
Yeah, I think the one tip is to really value and develop an ecosystem of relationships. I think like my younger self, I was very, my background is more in technology. And I think like a lot of women were really focused on the to-do list, on the achievement, on the what we are doing. And we invest less time and value, and we don't value as much the time that is spent building relationship, showing up at Chamber of Commerce meetings, networking with people, maybe taking up, golf is one great way to get to know people, going to baseball game. It takes a long time, baseball games, but when you sit in the seats, you have a chance to talk to people, to exchange, to get to know them better. And I think as busy women, and I'm going to say women in particular, because men value that naturally a lot more. And the men that I've seen, they value taking the time to expand their network, to get to know people, to say, oh yeah, I know this person. They just do it. And they have a very broad network. And I think women, we have a tendency to kind of stay with our close friends, girlfriends, and not expanding our network as much as we can in very different spheres, whether it is what I call town hall relationships, a political sphere of who represents you, who are your representative, who works in the city, who's your alderman, like develop that ecosystem of relationship, or in the professional sphere in the industry, just go beyond your own company and within your own company to get to know as many people as possible outside of your narrow department. So that would be my lesson learned, because your life is so much richer knowing that, there's someone that in every state, in every city. And that's what makes life worthwhile. And that's how we grow. And that's how you can advance your goals. And that's how you can help others, is by connecting. So I think that would be my big advice to my younger self and to everyone.
Like 1,000,000 times agree with you. Yeah. And all of that. Also, baseball games are long.
It's long when you're playing, but when you're there, it's actually, I go to baseball game and I invite people, because you're sitting there, you could really engage in all kinds of conversation while watching the game. It's really the only sport that you could do that. At a hockey, you cannot put your eyes off the ice because you're going to miss something, right? Same with basketball. Those are really fast-paced games. But baseball, it's slow and things are happening, and you could go get a drink and you meet the people around you. And it's just a really wonderful environment, I think, to develop relationships at a personal and a business environment as well. And you don't have to stay for the whole game. You can leave after the 7th inning stretch, right? You could leave, but it's a really great environment to do that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a big Cubs fan.
All right. Well, Sylvie, this has been a pleasure. Thanks so much for sharing. I really enjoyed your wisdom today. What's the best way if people want to find out more about the Policy Circle or get in touch, follow you online? Where should they go?
Yeah, well, I have also my podcast, Trust Your Voice podcast. So I invite people to do that, and visit thepolicycircle.org is a great place to learn about the Policy Circle and what is. And people can follow me on Instagram, Sylvie.Légère. That's my Instagram handle. And that's how you can find me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I learned a lot from Sylvie, and we will see you next time on a fresh episode of Talking Shizzle, where we will talk some new shizzle. We'll see what that is next time. All right. Bye. Well, hey there. That was fun. I love how much mind-blowing and mind-opening shizzle our guests bring to us with every episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player so that you don't miss a beat of the Talking Shizzle podcast. And if you're listening on Apple, be sure to let us know what you thought and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from our listeners so that we can bring you all the good, juicy business growth shizzle that you would like to hear about. Get in touch with us and follow along at creativeshizzle.com or email us at podcast@creativeshizzle.com. Until next time, keep making your shizzle happen.